Hi, I'm Meva, and this is Raising with the Village, a podcast where real parents share real stories so we can all feel a little more connected on this wild journey of raising children. In today's episode, we're back with Liz for the third and final part of her story. If you've been following along, you'll know just how much she's been through, from the decision to pursue IVF as a lone parent to the emotional realities of early pregnancy. And in this episode, we turn a corner. Liz takes us through the rest of her pregnancy, her birth experience, and what life looks like now as a solo parent. This part of her journey feels lighter, but no less powerful. There's so much honesty, but also so much joy, perspective, and practical wisdom woven throughout. We talk about preparing for birth on your own, building support systems, and the small, meaningful ways Liz has navigated early parenthood with intention and resilience. It is a beautiful, grounding conversation to close this series, and one that's full of reassurance for anyone walking in a similar path or simply curious about what solo parenthood can look like. So, let's listen to her story.
Hello again. The last time we spoke, I finished at the point where I was pregnant and moving out of the care of the clinic and into the NHS. So I had my scan to say that I was having a baby and that baby was doing really well. Everything was as it ought to be at that stage. And I was still incredibly anxious. So I was very aware that things could still go wrong. And I think every fibre of me was waiting for that 12-week mark. For any pregnancy, the chances of success go up enormously. I was 43, so it's technically a geriatric pregnancy, although I don't think they call it that anymore. But I was mindful of my age going into the NHS and mindful of navigating it by myself. Although the NHS were fairly cool, like they didn't. I think my very first midwife appointment, I'd given permission for my IVF clinic to speak to my GP, so they had written and given all of their information about the pregnancy. I made an appointment with my GP to do the official "Hello, I'm pregnant" conversation and the next steps. And the GP read the information, was very congratulatory, and forwarded me into forwarded me on to how to do all the midwife information. And then I had my first midwife appointment very quickly after that. And it was exciting. It was exciting. There were a few moments like going to my first appointment, sitting in a big waiting room with a lot of other people in the same position, but being very mindful that a lot of them were couples. There were some women there on their own, but a lot of couples there together for their first appointment, you know. And me being aware that no, this is just me. But I think honestly, the excitement of being pregnant absolutely overshadowed any sadness that I was doing it by myself. At that point, I was just like, oh, I don't care. I'm getting what I want. I've got a baby. It still felt very abstract, I think. Yeah. So then answering questions about who the baby's father is. Um, but I was very open and explicit that it was a donor, because I just figured that's the easiest thing to do. Once it's on the notes, it's on the notes, and then I have less questions later. I might as well just answer them now. And I've always intended to be completely honest with my daughter. I didn't know she was a daughter at that point, but I've always intended, even from that moment, to be explicitly honest with my child about their parentage, because I feel absolutely no shame about going through this process. And that's not to say there weren't moments of feeling, yeah, sadness that I hadn't followed the conventional path, and sometimes maybe that awkwardness of having to explain or feeling maybe that I owe an explanation about not having followed the path. I've always decided that I am going to be completely honest with my kids because yeah, because I think if I am not honest, it becomes a dirty secret. It becomes something that is shameful or something that breaks the trust between me and my child. I think the child's entitled. This is my view. The child is entitled to know and understand where they come from. She might choose at 18 to find her dad, so I want her to have that choice and be able to explore that choice in a healthy way, or choose not to take it. This is up to her. Then it was the normal, all the normal appointments that people go through.
How did you feel towards society when it came to the story of your pregnancy, the origin, I guess, of your pregnancy? Was it something you were as comfortable with when it came to explaining, or did you just feel maybe that you didn't owe anyone any explanation?
Yeah, I feel like it depended on who I was talking to. I feel like I owe no one an explanation. You know, it's not their business. Who cares? It's my child's business and it's my business, and no one else's business at all. But people have a way of being curious, and I mostly their curiosity is that people are like, oh my god, wow, when the person that they have known as single for years is suddenly pregnant, people wonder what's gone on there because people are nosy. And like, I'm all right with them being nosy. I'm nosy. I want to know, if other people are doing it, I'm like, oh. And it doesn't mean that that necessarily comes with enormous judgment. And I think I, it's gauging your audience. It's gauging who it is that you're talking to, and like you know the kind of people that are going to be, wow, I don't think you should do it that way. And those people can just fuck off. Like I'm not concerned about those people. I'm not concerned about them. Um, it's more uncomfortable, but equally, if I feel like that's the reception I'm going to get, I'm just not going to give you the answers. You don't deserve them. um, I think yeah, I'm very blessed with the people that I have around me. Um, being very open-minded and very accepting. I was probably more nervous at the beginning of telling people, but honestly, I've never had a negative reaction. I've heard whispers of negative reactions. So, like a friend of a friend being like, oh, I wouldn't do that. Or, oh, I don't think that's very fair on the child is one that I have heard. Um, And also like, okay, that's your view. And I can kind of understand the view that am I depriving my child of something by not allowing them a father? I can understand that questioning without being offended by it, if you know what I mean. Um to that, I would answer, maybe I am, maybe, but my child's growing up in a home where they are enormously loved, and I strive for them. And there are children that grow up with two parents that don't get that. There are children that grow up where dad's done a runner and is nowhere to be seen. And I would much prefer for my child that they have the story that they have, which is an incredibly wonderfully kind person helped mummy to have a baby. They didn't have to do that. And one of the lovely things that I got from the donor sperm clinic is a voice recording of my little girl's donor dad. He recorded a message about why he chose to be a donor. And part of that message was that he'd seen a documentary about families struggling with fertility and he wanted to help. And what a wonderful thing for her to hear that that was his motivation. Like, that's so much better than, I don't know, what could have happened at any point during my adolescence, which is mummy got drunk, mummy had sex, and mummy got pregnant, and we don't know where daddy is. Like, and I'm not shading anyone for that, because believe me, I absolutely, it's there, but for the grace of God go I. Like, that's not me judging, but from the point of view of the child who has the missing dad, I feel like it's never going to be easy. It's never going to be an ideal situation. So if I'm working with not ideal situations, I'm happy with the not ideal situation that I've got. Yeah, I hope that makes sense to people. Like, it's never straightforward. So this is where we are.
I'm very happy you told it this way. So shall we go back to the NHS? So obviously they start with a few questions. Who is the dad? You inform them of the situation. What next? Does it have any other impact for your pregnancy follow-up?
No, like, it's being older had more of an impact than being single. Once I had accepted, and I had accepted from the moment of going through IVF, that this is my journey alone, that there were going to be difficult bits that I was going to do by myself, but also that's not out of character for my life. I was single. This is dealing with life, isn't it? So the appointments were more frequent because I was older. But I felt reassured by that. So there's a bigger risk for an older mum, that there are things that might go wrong. There's a bigger risk of genetic disorders, so like Down syndrome with any older mum. There's a bigger risk later in pregnancy that the placenta can fail. So the NHS, when you're pregnant, will send you for a lot more frequent scans, and mostly that is about checking the rate of growth of the fetus, and that your placenta is doing its job well, so that they can intervene quickly if something's going wrong. I felt very reassured by that. That was great. I had a slight complication, but not with the pregnancy. I got oh, actually, no, I don't know if I want to share it. Let me tell it and then I'll decide. So at the start of the second trimester, I got diarrhea, and I thought, oh, I've eaten something that's disagreed with me. I don't know what this is. I've caught a bug. I like something's gone round at work and I picked it up. I don't know. But it didn't stop. It got worse and worse and worse and worse. Yeah, so I was under a consultant. There was a query that I might have developed Crohn's disease. So I had just really bad diarrhea. It was relentless. They did tests to check my inflammation levels. And your safe inflammation is between 0 to 50. And mine was at 1,500, which is incredibly high and puts the baby at risk. So there are all sorts of things that might happen as a result of inflammation being that high. No one could really pardon the pun, get to the bottom of it, of why it had happened. However, I think my personal theory is that I ate something at someone's house that was maybe a bit out of date and gave me a stomach bug, and being pregnant, obviously you're way more vulnerable. And then on top of that, I'm an incredibly allergic person. I've got an awful lot of allergies. I'm allergic to nuts, pollen, mildew, you name it, I've got an allergy, dairy, to different degrees, but this is just how I am. And I had been put on aspirin. So as an older mum, the risk of clotting is quite high. So they will give you like just a junior aspirin. You're supposed to take, it's a baby aspirin every day to help prevent the risk of clotting. However, I think getting a bad tummy and then taking the aspirin on top of that was more than my digestive system could handle. And I was poorly. I felt awful. So I couldn't work at that point. I It was a really hot summer as well. I was just horizontal on the sofa. The only thing I could eat was like ice pops. Getting to the shops to buy food was dicey. It was scary. I knew where all the toilets were.
Oh
Um,
dear.
yeah, that was not so much fun, and that went on for it was the middle trimester, so it was like 3 months. with really bad diarrhea and hospital appointments. But I made a decision to stop taking the aspirin, because I figured that wasn't helping at the very least. The hospital were quite against me stopping taking it, but I was like, guys, you need to find an alternative solution to this. So they agreed to put me on blood thinning injections, which was fine for me. Like, I've done a lot of injections at this point. And actually, as soon as we did that, my inflammation levels started to come back down. So at the point of birth, my stomach still wasn't great, but it wasn't, I could eat. And my inflammation dropped down to about 500. So my consultant was like, well, that's still pretty high, but it's a lot bloody better than it was. But yeah, navigating being ill on top of being pregnant and doing it by yourself, that was hard work. Like, when you're feeling rough for 3 months and you're just laying on the sofa, having someone else to bring you food and drink would have been lovely, but I didn't have that, so I had to get on with it in the same way that I would have to get on with being ill anyway as a single person. But yeah, it was scary. It was scary to think that something might happen to the baby, but every scan was saying that the baby was developing beautifully. I was worried about stuff that you can't see on a scan. So I know that high inflammation can impact eyesight, things like that. But again, absolutely no problems. And when she was born, she was fighting fit. All of her APGAR tests that they do when a baby's first born, it was tens for everything. She came out screaming. She was great.
She was ready to be here.
She absolutely was. Oh no, I say that, but I haven't talked about the birth. I don't know if she was ready.
Oh,
She got
okay.
evicted.
Oh, no. How far along did you go?
Well, so yeah, doing birth by yourself. So I wasn't completely by myself. I had a close family member and my friend who was going to be
Shh.
original donor dad. The closer birth got, the more anxious and excited. Like, I'm sure this is stuff that every pregnant woman with their first pregnancy experiences. You don't know. You don't know what it's going to be like. You've heard a lot of people tell you what it's going to be like, but you can't know that until you're doing it. I'm a weird woman anyway. Like, I spent a lot of time watching oh, what's that series called?
Was it One Born Every
One
Minute?
Born Every Minute? Yeah, I was obsessed with One Born Every Minute. I was obsessed before I had a baby. I used to watch that program, and that moment where that baby would be plopped onto mum's chest. Oh, I wanted that. I wanted that so much. I was desperate for that. And I used to watch One Born Every Minute through my fingers and be like, okay, brace yourself, but look at the end. Look at what happens at the end. You get the baby. So yeah, I used to watch that and try and like prepare myself for what was coming. It like nothing can prepare you. Yeah, so it's scary. So I chose my close family member as a birth partner. And I had my baby's the guy that was originally going to be her donor, my really close friend. He didn't come. He wasn't going to do the birth partner part because I don't think he was ready for that. But he was absolutely like on hand, shall we say, if needed. And he was in the hospital when my baby was born. He saw me for a little bit when I was like in labour. Because of being older, I was given the option to be induced on her due date. So I had to choose either to be induced on her due date or to go for daily scans from that point, just to make sure that the placenta was okay. I decided that because getting to the hospital was a pain in the bum, because I'm a bit of a control freak and I wanted to know exactly when I was going to do this so that I could know exactly when I was going to stop working. And I wanted to meet my baby. I wanted that baby out, and I wanted it all as smooth as possible. So I opted to be induced at her due date. I mean, it could have happened before. Obviously, babies come when babies come. But yeah, she hung on in there till her due date. So the the morning of, I did not sleep at all. The night before, I spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to empty my phone and back up all the photos that were on there so that I had a completely empty phone. Yeah, I was just excited and terrified of making sure I had all the things that I needed or that I thought that I needed to take in with me, la 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 la, all of the little preparations. And then the morning came, we went in, I got taken to my ward and my bed and felt like I sat on it for an inordinate amount of time before anybody actually came and dealt with me. I was probably in the hospital for a couple of hours before somebody came and did the pessary to begin the process. So yeah, they did the pessary and then it was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. I think um, my birth partner went home for a bit for a rest, and I watched YouTube and had tried to have a nap because I was dead tired, but I was not very good at napping because I was also massively excited and anxious. Then by probably about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, I started to actually feel some contractions. Messaged for my birth partner to come back. They were very slow coming back. Um, and I was starting to get a bit scared. So I'm like, please hurry up. I don't want to be by myself for this bit. I had no food at this point, so I was just on water. I can remember being a bit hungry, but also really scared that if I ate anything and I was going to mess something up somewhere. So I was hungry, but coping with it. It was low on my list of priorities, I suppose. Yeah, we did laps of the hospital while I played Pokemon Go because I'm a nerd. Um, and I just remember starting the walk and being like, "Oh, there's a twinge. Oh, there's a little twinge," and like pausing for a little contraction. By the time we walked back after like an hour, oh my word, every time I contracted, I was like, "Oh, I've got to stand still and bend over. This is like hurting now. This is ouchy." Got back to the ward and the midwife checked me, and they decided they wanted to put a strap around me to measure the baby's heart rate. And as I sat on the edge of the bed, I was really glad that I was on the ward at this point. I felt the pop and my waters broke. And I was like, oh shit, here we go. Here we go. We're in business.
It's starting.
Yeah. And I think it's to do with being induced. It those contractions went from 0 to a lot very quickly, very
That's
quickly.
what they say.
And yeah, I was laying on my back, strap around me, had nothing, no gas and air or anything like that at that point. I did have a TENS machine, and ladies, I recommend. I had it on my back, and I was unconvinced that it was helping, so I decided to leave it off for a contraction. Oh my goodness, I turned that thing back on so fast. It really did make a difference. I know they don't help everybody, but like yes, it got me through that first bit. I needed that TENS machine. I had it cranked up as high as I could have it. And then we carried on like that for bloody hours, hours. It felt like, I think at about 2 a.m., they took me to a private room because one had become available. That's what we were waiting for. And then they tried to get a cannula in my hand and couldn't. I think I was dehydrated probably. So I think a nurse tried, a doctor tried. I was starting to look a bit like a pincushion. So they said the anaesthetist was in the building. So they were like, get him down, he can do it. And while he was there, I essentially grabbed him by his lapels and was like, give me, give me pain relief. I need an epidural.
Now,
And he
give
was
me the
like,
good drugs.
sure, like, yeah, she was like, she's contracting regular, like everything seems to be okay. Her contractions are regular. So they did me an epidural, and I was very, very, very happy from that point on. And from that point on, everything was a little bit blurry because I felt as high as a kite after having the epidural. But her heart rate kept dipping and not coming back up. They had a conversation with me and were like, we're going to check how dilated you are. And we're tracking the baby's heart rate. And we kind of just want to see if things settle down. We're going to see how you are. If her heart rate settles, we will give you a drug to open your cervix. So I suppose it was like she was hitting her head against a wall at that point. That's how it felt anyway. um, and then, yeah, but her heart rate didn't settle. And there was a moment where my nurse was watching the monitor, which was above my head. And I was very aware that all eyes were on the monitor and everyone seemed like they were holding their breath. And I was like, oh, something's bad's happening here. And they were like, the nurse was like, right, let's go. A button got pushed and she was like, we're going to take you for surgery. Everyone's ready. We're going to do a cesarean. And I burst into tears. And I can remember the nurse saying, it's okay. You're going to be okay. The baby will be okay. And I was like, I'm just excited that I'm going to meet my baby. But I was massively lying. I was absolutely terrified, but I didn't want to. I think I was just too scared to confront the thought that something was going wrong, if that makes sense. So I was like, nope, I'm going to meet her. It's all fine. Everything is fine. I've actually got an amazing photo of the moment as just before the bed was wheeled, where I'm doing a thumbs up to the camera. My nurse and my mate jumped in the picture and we were like thumbs up to the camera doing a big cheesy grin, and then I got whisked away. I don't remember arriving in the room. I remember just being in the room and everybody in the room, I've got to say, it was amazing. I felt very safe. The radio was playing. I was trying so hard to pay attention to the music, and I cannot remember a single song. I tried so hard. I really wanted to be. I can remember thinking I want to be able to say what music was playing, but I couldn't. I couldn't retain that information. Yeah, and then they set to work, and I was like, wow. Just telling my birthing partner, be ready with the camera, be ready with the camera. And it felt like forever and seconds at the same time. A nurse at one point was like, you're going to feel a bit of a rocking movement. And it did. It felt like my body was rocking from side to side. I don't know what was going on, but I think that's where they were lifting the baby out. And then I heard her cry, and it was amazing. It was just the best. She did a big cry, and then they held her up so I could see the little purple blob of a child. She was screaming her butt off, and it was like, it was mad. I'd had a 3D scan a few weeks before she was born, and I could see it was her. I could just see it was her. She looked exactly like her scan. It was just wild, wild. Yeah, then they whisked her away, put a hat on because all babies have to have hats. Did all of her scores, put her under lamps and did her measurements. She got wrapped in a towel and very quickly put by me. And I remember just saying like, oh, hello, baby. Oh, it chokes me up thinking about it. Just like, happy birthday. Oh, and just her little eyes just looking. She looked like she was just looking at me really intently. Oh, and I kissed her. And then they whisked her away to do other things. And I think at that point I was out cold. I just fell asleep. And the next thing I remember was being sort of shaken awake. They were like, right, we're moving you to recovery. Here we go. Plopped her in my arms, and immediately, like, the nurse helped her latch, and I started feeding her, got whisked down the corridor feeding her, which felt, I can remember thinking, this is just weird. I feel very exposed. There's men wheeling me up the corridor, like the porters, and I've got my boob out, and this feels really odd. Like, I've never had my boobs out for people in public before. And
Well,
suddenly
most
this feels
people
like,
don't.
right?
Normal
Right?
life.
I had a conversation with my And my niece, shortly after the baby was born, I was like, "Oh, I've got to feed her." And my niece and my nephew were like, "Oh, it's fine. Like, it's really natural. We really support that." And I was like, "That's lovely, guys, but I I I feel really weird about feeding in front of you because you're my niece and nephew, and I don't get my boobs out in front of people, and I'm not sure how I'm doing this yet because it was very, very early." And I was like, "I've spent the last 43 years keeping them covered in public, and this feels weird to me."
As one
Um,
usually does.
right, right. It's just a really odd experience to like this brand new thing. And although I was like really cool with the feeding part, it was the idea of other people seeing me. And again, that's not I never once received any judgment. People were very respectful and courteous. If I fed in a coffee shop or something, I found ways of doing it so that I felt comfortable. So mostly I put a muslin just covering most of my chest, so very little could be seen. Like I found ways of doing it discreetly so that I felt comfortable with what I was doing. But yeah, she latched. That initial bit of breastfeeding, that was challenging because it's your boobs are doing something they've never done before and it feels very odd, and a bit sore after a while. But honestly, I think in the grand scheme of feeding, it went really smoothly. She latched really well. I remember the moment my milk came in properly. So that next couple of days is very blurry and very disjointed in my memory because I was tired and tearful because of the hormones, and my body's just been through an enormous thing. So some moments are clearer and some moments are less. But I remember when I was first able to get up after the C-section and go for a shower was when my milk came in. So I think it was like the next day. I was really a bit determined to get up. I don't know what that was about. I should have been kinder on myself maybe, but it felt really important to get out of that bed. I was really after having difficulties going, like, with diarrhea throughout the pregnancy, I was really scared about going to the toilet and whether I was gonna get diarrhea, and that it was cured. It was cured. Apparently, morphine, it has a constipating effect, and I have to say, the lady next to me was having real trouble going at all. She got very constipated, but for me, it was a very happy medium. And that first toilet after having her was wonderful. It was wonderful. No,
I like that
no,
we
it's
have a
gross
theme
to
here.
I have never enjoyed a poo so much. I was really scared about pushing because of my stitches, but actually it was glorious. It was glorious.
We're all very
Yeah.
happy for you. I'm glad they went.
Oh. Honestly, though, after 3 months, more than 3 months of diarrhea, to have a normal poo was just so good. It was just so good. Um, yeah, but when my milk first come in, oh my goodness, I went to have a shower, and I'm so glad it happened in the shower. I think as the hot water hit my chest, from that point on, feeding, thankfully, was pretty plain sailing. It was a new skill to get used to. And I know, like, I'd got all the apps and I'd read all the stuff, and I had an app to track my feeding. But I'm dyslexic and I think a little bit ADHD, and tracking that feeding was next to impossible. I'd forget to do it, or I'd do it too late and couldn't keep an eye on the time. I remember at one point there, I I just had her. It was the next morning, and they were doing the ward rounds, and the doctors came in and were like, has she fed? How many times have you fed her?" And I was like, "I don't know. Has she pooed? Have you changed her nappy?" I'm like, "Yeah." "How many times?" I was like, I didn't know there was gonna be a quiz. I've not been keeping track of this. Am I supposed to keep track of this?" It's like, "Oh, really? She's pooed. She's pooed and weed." I don't know. Don't know what to tell you. But yeah, we settled very quickly into a rhythm of demand feeding. I just demand fed because that was easiest for my brain and seemed to work well for her. Um, and I just trusted that she was getting a nappy change. So what was going in was coming out. Newborn nappies are wild, and I have never before Googled should poo be this colour uh, before. But yeah, nappies were wild for me. Turns out, yes, bright orange poo is really normal for newborn
Really
babies.
normal. That's what you want. The whole, what do they say, mustard or
Like,
curry type of paste.
yeah, yeah, and black little flecks in it apparently is really normal with breastfed babies as well. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, that was normal. Thank goodness for Google. Google has been my best friend. Google and caffeine are my co-parents. And then yeah, and then I got to bring her home. I got to bring her home, and that was amazing. That was just amazing. Having this little person, I was exhausted, I was in pain. I wasn't able, the only painkillers that I could have because of feeding and because of my experience with the diarrhea and the aspirin. It turns out, by the way, I didn't have Crohn's disease. After I had her, everything gradually settled back to
Mm,
normal, which again says it was pregnancy related and it was aspirin related.
okay.
So yeah, everything was fine. Everything went back to normal. But yeah, I was knackered, but really, really happy. Really, really happy. But yeah, I could only take paracetamol. So post C-section and just paracetamol was pretty painful. I'm
Mm.
not gonna lie, that was not it was not comfortable. And I was on the clock with those because you can only have, like, I can't remember now, 4 a day or something like that. So I was, like, measured to the moment and set an alarm clock for those paracetamol. Because I was like, "I am having them on the button. Otherwise, if I don't track this properly, I'm gonna overdose."
Did your
Um,
birth partner go home with you at that point?
my birth partner came home with me and stayed for, like, a week or so to help me settle down, help establish the, like, routine that I was gonna be in. Although there was no routine. There's no routine for months and months. I'm not a
Welcome to
very
the baby
routine-based
world.
person. Some people are very good at, as soon as I get home, I'm gonna get the baby in a routine, la 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 la. That's great for them. I am not that person. I barely have a routine in my own life. I was on demand feeding. We played life by ear. So having a tiny, tiny baby by yourself, um, there's all of the wives' tales and advice and things like that, like sleep when the baby's sleeping. For some people, like I can only tell you what worked for me. That one absolutely worked for me. Every time that child had a nap, I would look at her and go, right, am I napping, eating, or washing? Or washing my like doing housework. And I'm telling you now, 90% of the time I chose napping because, I'm 43, I'm an older mum, I'm I've got to allow my body to recover and have the energy to keep going for the next feed or the next whatever's coming down the road. And I don't know what's coming. I'm knackered. So yeah, I most often chose food or sleep. If she was lucky, I chose a shower. Or a bath. What I would do, because there's no partner, there's no one to hand who can hold the baby while I go wash. So I had like a little swing thing, and I used to put that in the bathroom next to the bath, so she could swing in the bar in the swing while I washed. Hopefully she would sleep, but I would put her in that just so that I could put a hand out and know she was okay. Because if I left her in the other room in the Moses basket, that child would scream. Whereas if I could talk to her, she might be settled enough to let me finish washing. Like, because I tried it a few times and I'd get halfway through a shampoo and she would be howling, and then my milk would be filling the bath, and I would just be in a
Complete
hot mess.
chaos.
I'd be upset. Whereas if I put her in the room with me, her absolute chaos, absolute chaos. If she's in the room with me, I can at least talk to her and be like, "It's okay, I'll be quick, la la la." And sometimes I think the splashing noise from the water and things like that calmed her down as well. So yeah, like that's how I roll. And a lot of my friends are working, so I was at home on my own. I didn't have too many people that I could be like during the afternoon, "Oh my God, can you just come and help with A, B, or C?" I was on my own with it, or in the middle of the night. Um, but someone from work had recommended an app where you can a message to say, I'm a new mum in the area. Does anybody want to go for a walk around the park? And a wonderful woman called Hannah was like, "Yes, I've got a new baby too. Shall we walk around the park together?" Um, and we did, and we are still besties now. She lives in a different part of England. I live in a different part of England, but we talk regularly. And she came and visited a couple of weekends ago with her baby, who is now, our kids are both, I think her one's just turned 7 and mine is about to be 7, which is wild because at the time there was like a month between them. Other people, I think, get friends from doing um or the like classes before. But I didn't bother with any of the classes. It was too hard to juggle them with work. I didn't want to pay for NCT because that's expensive. And I didn't really want to put down roots in that area particularly because I knew I was going to move area. So I chose to move to an area where I have more family. And we're now in the country, kind of on the edge of the countryside, which to me is like wild. Um, but it feels very peaceful and it feels like a really good place for raising a kid. So we did a bit of rental accommodation until we bought my home now. And the baby became 1. We moved in here and it was just before Christmas. So that was lovely. And this is where the roots are and where we've done all of the growing up stuff, which has been amazing. Going from a tiny baby to a toddler, making friends in the area, finding a nursery, doing all the nursery stuff, finding a school, doing the school run and the school friends and all the birthday parties. Yeah, it's great. It's great.
I'm so glad that you and your daughter got to meet because you were clearly meant to meet. I think that probably brings that conversation to a natural end. But before we end, I would have probably one question for you. What would you say if you got to meet Liz of 7 or really 8 years ago?
I would say, what would I say? I would say keep doing it. It's worth it. This is going to be amazing. I would say you have amazing skills at making friends, and that is going to be really, really fucking helpful. That's going to be the most helpful thing. Doing this by yourself means you're going to need people. Sometimes people offer more than they are actually able to give. They might do it with the best of intentions, but when it comes to it, it's maybe more than they are able to do. And if you expect that and understand that, you maybe won't be resentful about it. But understanding that having lots of people spreads the load and spreads the joy. And that in those moments where you are doing it really by yourself, and they they will be many and they will feel really difficult, you are stronger than you know how to be. You will learn on the job, girl. The things that cause anxiety are things that cause all parents anxiety. Finances, time, juggling stuff. Is there time in the day to do the work and do the school run and do the cleaning and do all of the things that are required of you. Sometimes things can't be done, and that's life. And be kind to yourself about that. Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. Um, there were questions from my child that I wish I had anticipated more, or I don't know. I think I had anticipated them. That has asked very probing questions that feel incredibly scathing about why I don't have a daddy. Why did you do it by yourself? Why why couldn't you find a man? That has actually been a question that I have been asked. And they're very confronting questions. And I gave her the same answers or the same explanation that I've given in this podcast, really. Like, I don't keep it a secret, and she doesn't have a perfect mum. Um, I understand her asking the questions. I'm not going to be mad at her, even if it feels really judgy. You've not been judged properly till you've been judged by a 6-year-old. But she's entitled to ask these questions, and you've got to be braced for them to come, and you've got to be ready with those answers. A massive help to anyone going through IVF and how to talk about it with their kids. I bought so many kids' storybooks. So some amazing ones. I can't think of the titles right now, but I can share them. Or one book's the P That Was Me, that explains IVF as a process. So by the time my daughter was 3, she understood what IVF was and how she was made, and fully thought that everybody was made that way. And when she got to school, she understood that not everybody was made that way, and other people had a daddy that was present. And then we had questions about that. So she understands biology broadly at an appropriate level. But yeah, there are some really great storybooks. Oh, one called My Mummy Made Me, which is beautiful. It makes me cry. It's just very emphasizes that my mummy wanted to share her love. And so My Mummy Made Me is very gorgeous. And she loves those books. She loves them. And actually, as school is progressing and couples break up, she has more friends now that don't have a daddy in the picture, or have a daddy that lives in a different house. She has a friend that has 2 mummies, like, starting to realize that not all families are mum, dad, kid has been really important to us. And that's a big help for her. So that's something that is valuable, and that's something I would say to me, like, to prepare, and something that I would say to anyone else thinking about doing the same journey.
I'm so glad for you that you've got such a beautiful and rich community, by the sounds of it, for you to be part of. That makes me really happy.
Sometimes I would pay solid good money for someone else to do bedtimes, because by that point I'm knackered. I should also add, just as a sweetener for all this deal, because I went into it late. You know, if I could redo anything, I'd just start earlier so that I was a bit younger. I've gone straight from postnatal Liz to perimenopausal Liz, and that comes with its own wild ride for hormones and managing exhaustion. So I got straight on the HRT as soon as I could. It took a while to realise that it was perimenopause that I was going through, and not just exhaustion from single mumming. Um, but yeah, as soon as I realised that, I'm like, I need help. It's physiological help from my GP. So I got HRT as soon as possible. Because that, being an older mum, that's something else that I have to navigate, that a younger mum wouldn't have to. As much as I would say start younger, also that's with full recognition that we go on the journey we go on when we're ready to do it. And I don't think I was ready before I was ready.
Mm.
And so I don't beat myself up for that. But yeah, if I could change anything, that would be the thing that I would change.
Mm.
Just to be a bit younger when I began. Maybe start at 40.
There you go. There you go. Well, I think that's a beautiful end to the story, beautiful last words. Is there anything else that you want to add that we've not covered and you wish we would have, or anything else you want to share?
No, I think that's that's the whole journey, and it's one that I'm still doing. Like, I'm preparing for a birthday, and it's a fortune. I'm buying gerbils at the weekend because that's exciting. And we laugh a lot. We have a lot of fun. And that's the part that always, the fun and the snuggles, like, that's the part that always makes the temper tantrums and the tiredness melt away. But everyone who's a parent will relate to that, you know?
That is for sure. That is true. Well, I as for myself, I really want to know a lot more about those gerbils. So, so let me know how that
Apparently, we're
goes.
calling them trick, and we're going to get 2, and they're going to be called Trick and Treat because it's coming up to Halloween right now. That's the name that has been decided on.
Okay. Well, hopefully they are well-behaved trick and treat gerbils.
But thank you for inviting me to talk about it. I hope I've not been boring. I hope that anyone thinking about going down the single mum IVF path gets something from it. You know, I'm not saying that my journey is the way that your journey will go or how they have to go. That's just how it's been for me. Different strokes for different folks. But if anyone is doing it, I wish you luck and I wish you well.
Well, I've loved the story. So at least you've not bored me. Thanks so much, Liz. Thanks so much for sharing.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye. And that brings us to the end of Liz's story. And what a journey it's been. Over these 3 episodes, she hasn't just shared her experience of solo parenting. She's given us something much deeper, a real, honest guide to what it means to long for a child, the wanting, the uncertainty, the anxiety that can quietly take hold, and the kind of disappointment that can break your heart and sometimes even break your soul. But also the rebuilding, the resilience, and ultimately the moment life finds its way to you. Liz has opened the door to conversations we don't hear often enough. The messy, the emotional, the in-between moments of trying, hoping, and becoming. And in doing so, she's created something so many people will see themselves in. Liz, thank you for your honesty, your courage, and your generosity in sharing every step of your journey. And thank you to you for listening. If this episode resonated, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. I'll see you next time on Raising with the Village. Raising with the Village will now be released every other Thursday, giving me the space to keep bringing you thoughtful and honest conversations. You can find all past episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you usually listen. And you can follow the show there, so new episodes land straight into your feed. If you'd like to get in touch, share feedback, or suggest a story, you can find me on Instagram at Raising with the Village. I always love hearing from you. And if this podcast has resonated with you, one of the best ways to support it is by subscribing, rating, leaving a review, or sharing an episode with someone who might need it. It truly makes a difference and helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Thank you for being part of the village, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.